All right, and the live stream is beginning. So in a second here, it'll be all set up to go. All right, it's done. So. All right. So here it is 6:13 p.m. As chair, I will be calling this meeting to order. Prior to the roll call vote, to the roll call for attendance, I'd like to apologize. I was a little bit delayed from work. So my day got a little bit ahead of me. So I got here a little bit late to set up the technology. So I apologize for that. Mr. Secretary, you can call the roll call.
Chair Angel Valentin.
Present.
Member David Tate.
Present.
And Secretary Betts is present. Chair, we have a quorum. We are also graced with the presence of our trustee folks. So there you go. Thank you for finding the time, Jennifer.
All right. So next up, we'll have the Pledge of Allegiance. So if everybody could please stand. All right. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Mr. Secretary, I would move that we approve the previous board minutes without reading them. They were posted on the website. Do I have a unanimous consent?
Agreed.
So agreed.
All right. So we're approving the previous board minutes for the last meeting in November by unanimous consent, as well as the October meeting. I would also move same thing, that we approve the meetings for the late October meeting through unanimous consent.
That would be October 30th, and then also we just did November 16th.
Correct. Hearing no opposition, unanimous consent is granted. All right, so prior to us going into the presentation by Ryan O'Gara, we have a township update from the Office of a Trustee. Is there such an update at this time?
Did you happen to send over your agenda tonight to our legal counsel, Ray?
Well, I let him know that it was posted. I spoke with him yesterday.
You did. Is he in attendance tonight? Did he respond to you?
I don't see him in the list of attendance. I don't think
I didn't see that email. That's not to say it. I'm sorry.
What was that, Jennifer? I didn't catch your last statement.
I'm sorry. I didn't hear you. I didn't realize I was talking over you.
No, it was just...
There, I just did it again. What did you say, Brendan? What did you say?
I just said that I didn't hear you, so I apologize.
Yeah, I think your computer's a little bit delayed, and that's why it was having that issue. It wasn't... But you said you weren't going to speak, correct? Because the council was not in attendance?
Yes, correct.
Right.
Thank you.
Right. So, is there an update from the fire department? You can come up here.
Yeah. Since the 1st of December, we've made 67 runs. And we're at 1,207 runs year to date this year, and we did a total of 1,217 runs for the whole year last year. So we're definitely going to break last year's total.
All right. And then going on to the new business.
Mr. Chair, could I ask Chief Lewis, how many of those were medical?
I can't tell you off the top of my head,
But probably 80%.
75 to 80%, yes.
Thank you.
So Mr. Lewis stated that 75 to 80% of the runs were medical. Just putting that on the record, since it probably wasn't caught by the microphone, since he was away from the mic. All right, so going on to new business. So today we have Area Plan Commission Ryan O'Gara. He's going to be presenting a little bit about the growth in the township. This is a unique opportunity for us. I don't think we've ever really gone through and spoken with Area Planning Commission, the APC, about some of the growth that's been going on as we try to figure out where we need to plan for the future, and what changes we've had in the recent past that really affect our fire protection primarily. So what we're really interested is in that, and I'll try to, if people have questions, if people have questions, you can put them on the chat. We'll try to keep track of them. We can give you an opportunity, or we can go through and unmute themselves. But first, we'll have Mr. O'Gara give a presentation. We're grateful that you're here today with us. Thank you.
All right. Well, this is my first time appearing before you guys, and it's a pleasure to be here. If I'm talking too fast or can't see me or something wrong with the presentation, just holler. Let me.
Should be able to do it at the bottom.
It's not registering a mouse.
It's on the other screen as well.
Oh, okay. Yeah, the screen's blank. All right, let me get down to my PDFs. Okay. So,
You can close that. Let me make it easier on you. Give me a second here.
can we minimize these guys?
Yeah. Because that's.
It's not letting me.
Yeah. Oh, so what it is that it's extending the screen. So you just have to drag it over.
There we go.
Okay,
Yeah.
good job.
Well, let's start with the basics. So these of course, are our township maps. Our last, so the comprehensive plan of Tippecanoe County was sort of originally laid down in the early 1980s, and of course has been amended many, many times over the years. And beginning with that first, and I can basically tell you, a comprehensive plan essentially is a document that in part makes policies for recommendations for future growth. And it could be growth in any type of sector. It could be residential, it could be agricultural, industrial, et cetera. But it tries to use some techniques that are somewhat unique to our plan to try to ascertain where there are proper areas to develop, areas that maybe we should hold back on. And so in the early days of that comprehensive plan, many of the townships had plans that were created for them by our office, as well as the cities. And then within the two cities themselves, various neighborhoods wanted to have plans done because they wanted to grow in a certain way or not grow in a certain way. And they wanted to have firm policies that the public could count on. So then in the event somebody from the outside wanted to rezone property or do something like that, well, then these policies would be in place to remind the elected officials, whether it be the county commissioners or a city council, of what they pledged to do vis-a-vis that plan. So, the plans sort of inform changes in law, and so that's kind of how it works. And they're designed to be amended over the years as the community grows and needs change and unexpected things happen. And so, so one thing that was left out was the Wabash Township, and it wasn't on purpose. My understanding at the time, and this was many, many years ago, and some of the folks that have recently retired from our office were kind of earlier in their careers when this was going on. But apparently there was not much consensus about how to plan things, and so the process kind of got stymied. And we respect that with any locality, whether it's a city, neighborhood, township, whatever, one of the unincorporated towns. If they, these plans should sort of come from them. We're designed to assist, maybe give some ideas, give some information, but we sort of want it driven by the folks that live, work, do business, protect, all the stakeholders in that area should really have a say-so before these things get adopted. And my understanding was that at the time, and again, it was a long time ago, that there was just not a lot of agreement. So the process kind of got on the rocks and kind of just time moved on. And Wabash is not the only township that happened. There were others as well. I believe Washington County had a similar prospect, Tippecanoe, I think. So, but so we as staff, of course, as the years have gone by, we've seen the growth happen, you know, and we feel that there's still a need for some sort of planning document to kind of guide future growth. And we feel that certainly enough time has passed since that last effort decades ago that it's worth another try. And to that end, I can share with you some documents that we've worked on since. There we go. So here's without going into the township information, these are some of the more recent plans that have occurred concerning specific areas of the community, both in and outside of incorporated areas. And these could either be corridors. One very relevant to Wabash Township is the US 231 corridor plan, which is here shaded in blue. All of it's within the West Lafayette city limits, but it was sort of a flag being planted for this is how we want this corridor to grow, because it was largely greenfield sites. It's not very developed. About 2/3 of it's owned by Purdue or the Research Foundation, one or the other. West Lafayette downtown plan was most recently adopted. That's right in this area in pink. The new Chauncey Plan, the new Chauncey neighborhood, it's an old neighborhood just north of there, goes back just a few years before. And of course, the incorporated towns, Battleground, Dayton, even Little Clarks Hill has a plan. This green area was done sort of in the late 1980s. It was basically designed to sort of provide for Lafayette's future industrial expansion. And so that area was sort of set aside for that, not just industrial, but primarily so. And then I believe in 16, we did the Hoosier Heartland plan, which came right along when that roadway was completed and open for business. And of course, Battleground Town and some of its immediate vicinity has also been planned. And so these are areas that are studied. We study existing conditions, infrastructure conditions, and that's all manner of infrastructure, not just pipes and so forth, but firehouses and you name it. We look at real road conditions. We look at existing building conditions. We try to look for historic assets if there's any, things that we want to protect. If there's really none of that, then we move on to other things. But then it all kind of then we'll look at possible future transportation improvements that come out of our transportation planning work, which I'll share a bit with you here. And then we get really into the meat and potatoes, which is the future land use plan. We're actually mapping out the future, where you want growth to occur, what type of growth, what sort of intensity of growth, those sorts of things. And it honestly can be as simplistic or as complicated as you want it to be. There's really, the rules are fairly simplistic. Like with the 231 corridor, we weren't really dealing with the neighborhood. It's in fact, nobody really lives there. I mean, just a few people, compared to some of the denser parts of the cities. But this is more of kind of just broadly kind of outlining the sort of density we wanted. It was fairly fluid. Whereas you get into the more denser urban areas, I mean, we were doing like block by block planning of how we liked things to develop. So very, very specific, because the stakeholders in those areas kind of wanted that level of sophistication. So we're pretty responsive to that. So let's go on to another one here. Yeah, I'll start with the corridor plan. So this is the 231 corridor plan, a little closer to Wabash Township home. And we have land use descriptions, and then they're just simply color coded, and then they kind of correspond to certain districts that we call like low density residential. What does that mean? Well, here's the description: single family detached homes of varying lot sizes. We have different zones for bigger lots, smaller lots, etc. And so we're saying that if you have land that's kind of colored in this area, we're kind of open to some varying densities of single family, but primarily single family. And that's just one example. And then we have these other categories too, kind of little low-rise apartments, that sort of thing. And then of course, getting closer to campus and the airport, we have a little bit more activity. the Aerospace District, which Purdue changes the names of their districts so many times I can't keep up. It was Aerospace and it was Innovation. Now it's Discovery Park, so we'll see if it sticks. Anyway, regardless of those names, these spaces are sort of laid out, and then zoning changes. Am I still on?
Yes, I wanted to do something. Sorry, I realized that we missed one bit that would make it better for them.
Okay.
Forgot to share screen, so
You're the wizard.
I apologize. Oh, that would be me. Sorry. Sorry to interrupt, Brian. Here, I just want to make sure that the people online can see the documents as well. So.
You back on?
You're all good.
Okay.
Sorry. Great.
Yeah. So, so this is sort of this effort, and I can kind of briefly describe the theory of what happened here. Is these red areas are suburban commercial nodes, some that are already well underway, and then some that are just emerging. The Cumberland 231 intersection. Not much there now, but we hope there to be something. Now, this plan was adopted obviously well before the county schools' decision to lop off that northern part. So this plan already doesn't quite communicate with reality, but that happens. I mean, these sorts of things happen from time to time. This is why we amend these plans as time goes on as well, as conditions change. Like we at the time this was written, we didn't know county schools was eyeing that site. Had we known that, we would have done something a lot different. One thing we didn't want with the 231 corridors, we did not want it to become stripified, commercial stripified, where it's just this unbroken line of, South Street, Veterans Memorial Parkway. I mean, we have commercial strips, and we specifically did not want to encourage that. 231 is a limited access highway, but commercial operators get around that with frontage roads. And so what we did not want to see was we essentially wanted almost like a Purdue Parkway, winding its way down to Purdue, and have it be just broken up by special areas where commercial was allowed, but then other areas where there's not, like the Lindbergh intersection, which we've got a lot of fierce interest in having it flip commercial. We've kind of held the line, no more. And so that's starting to develop residentially, which is what we're asking for in this plan. And then once you get south of Lindbergh, you're starting to get into Purdue land. And so the Research Foundation or the university itself owns most of this. And they were partners with us, and they were obviously stakeholders. And so we sort of set aside areas that they felt comfortable would likely go residential. They didn't really see an immediate university need, or if they did, it was more of a residential need. And then certain fixed point areas like Horticultural Park, they're not interested in changing that at all. So we sort of just memorialized it. And then the kind of the mix of activity going on right now in the Discovery Park area, the Providence Project and other things that are coming there. And of course the airport and the light industrial areas where Saab is, these were all marked out in advance. These are the sort of things we were trying to anticipate for moving out of this area and further up into the township, what's going to occur there. And because we're getting development pressures there, that's the case. And let me go to another map. So this is from our 2045 transportation plan. This is one of our routine duties that our transportation group works on. Every 5-6 years it's updated, and this is the latest, greatest version. And what we try to do is based on existing building permit data and sort of speculating on, because we have conversations with developers all the time, and they'll talk about where they're thinking about going and what this phase might go, and of course it's a lot of it's tied to public sewer and water and that sort of thing. And so with this information, we sort of feed it into a computer model to try to outline. And in this case, these are by census tract areas. Actually, no, not census tract. Yeah, this is a specific to this computer model. These sort of zones that you see, not like land zone, but just physical areas that are set aside where we believe there's going to be activity. So this one is for future dwelling units, you know. And so as you can see, the West Lafayette suburbs are just they want to push deeper into Wabash Township as it's been occurring. This is nothing, should be nothing new. Some of the numbers might be kind of like, whoa, you got to be kidding me. No. But our model's been fairly reliable over the years. We've employed it, and we have a really expert operator who hopefully won't retire anytime soon. And we've been able to use these to justify transportation improvements, other infrastructure improvements, and to hopefully give the community some kind of window into what's going on. Yeah.
I understand what the numbers are, but what are the different shades? Are those industrial or low density housing, high density housing?
Yeah, let me go down to the. So it's basically just a range of dwelling unit colors. Okay. Yeah, that's essentially it. Yeah. So no, this is meant to be dwelling units. So not businesses, but residences with mailboxes. So, and they could be apartments, or they could be homes. It's dwelling units, regardless if it's rental or owner. That doesn't matter. Somebody lives there, and they need services. That's what we're trying to capture with this map. And so, as you can imagine, it's moving in this direction, and we already have some things popping up now over in Stonehenge. We just got approved phase 4 and 5, which will complete Stonehenge. It's planned development, small lot thing. I worked with Township Fire to make sure they were comfortable with the hydrant locations, all that, and of course the subdivision side, the phase 5 is also underway, and they're gonna. I know, in fact, the developer, Malakis, he's doing some lots in Dayton. He's going to kind of pivot and, pay attention to Stonehenge. So that's coming soon. And it'll obviously build out in phases, so, sir?
What about the area west of 400 west out 26 west? Has there been any interest in that? You go back to the other one.
This way?
No, down there where it's 150, 200, and 400.
Oh, down here?
West of there.
Oh yeah, the three Meadows project is well underway and under construction. Yeah.
Further west.
Further west of that.
Yes. I think it shows it on the previous map, the area I'm talking about.
Let me go to the previous map. Which one was it? Was it the
corridor map? 231 one?
That one?
Yeah, this is a little bit this way.
Yeah, I'm west of that. Yeah.
What have you heard?
Well, if I heard, I haven't heard anything, but I do know that I'm in the Westwood subdivision, which is just a half mile in Shelby Township.
Mm-hmm.
And they just ran the new water line and fire hydrants out there, so
okay.
There's quite a bit of farm acreage between 400 West and Westwood
that now has pipes in it.
that has pipes in it.
Yeah.
So I didn't know if you guys were looking at.
Well, off the top of my head, I'm not aware of any subdivision activity out that way. Certainly no reason.
Oh, sorry, I clicked on something.
I would imagine it's coming in the future, though.
Yeah, if it was previously, not watered, sewered, then it was likely probably still zoned agriculture. Chances are good. So they want to do any sort of subdividing, they're going to have to rezone at some point, and those petitions that's public fare, and that passes through our office. And so, and obviously, one thing we scrutinize, it's got to be on the grid. We don't support residential development kind of off the grid. Small lot subdivision type subdivision. If someone's doing large, rural lot, it's different. Yeah, exactly. If it's off the grid, that's different. That's kind of a semi-rural environment. But if they mean to do quarter acre lots, those sorts of things, on public streets, then yeah, it's got to be water and sewer.
Sorry to interrupt.
No, hey, please interrupt anytime. I'm really here to answer questions. So they also did some map deployment because, again, what they're looking for is vehicle trips, and that flows into future road projects and so forth. And so these are some areas that they had sort of outlined for possible future employment. It's kind of in the usual areas, but that also plays a part into our planning process. And then another one that's very important to note, and this is our transportation plan, which is an enormous document, but I'm kind of landing on this map because it's kind of fun. It's basically future roadways. This is, we've sort of looked at the data of, where future development may go, future jobs, future dwelling units and so forth. And then what are some good solid recommendations for road improvements to try to bring these projects, to make sure all the infrastructure is balanced, that we're growing and then we have the infrastructure to support it, in this case, road infrastructure. And so this map essentially lays out these future road projects. And one that we're, probably has the most consequence, and it's really in its kind of infancy stage right now, is possible future extension of US 231 north of 52 to interchange first with 65 and then to keep going and terminate at 43. And it's been on our books for a long, long time. It's been on NDOT's back burner for a very long time. It was sort of a natural extension of the original 231 concept, was that it gets here, all right, we've gotten through the core part of the urbanized area. We, circumvented Purdue, went around, and now we're kind of on the northern edge of the, more urban area. Well, as the community grows, they wanted to at least put a placeholder for a possible route. And we've been, over the years, at least in our office and with some of our West Lafayette, Purdue University, they're starting to see some value into, hey, maybe we should start to laser in on this one, before development starts creeping in areas where we might want to have this highway go. We've gotten, development, proposals, at the 231-52 intersection, for example. We're like, we actually might mean to put that road through there, so you might want to maybe go somewhere else. I mean, Meyer dropped its location specifically because it was anticipating essentially having a corner disposition. Yep. That was going to have this great visibility from an extended 231 and 52, existing 52. And honestly, it makes a lot of sense. I mean, Purdue University is on the cusp of rebuilding a brand new terminal. They mean to bring commercial flights back to the airport. All the traffic coming from Chicago southbound, if they diverted off onto this new highway extension, it really is kind of a new western front door for the university. And obviously is going to it'd be a really useful facility to help with the growth and traffic management of the northern part of Wabash Township and into Tippecanoe Township as well. Both townships would benefit from this. Yeah.
So I saw this several years ago.
Yeah.
I'm hearing you say this now. I'm thinking, so how do you play the, the anticipation of this extension 231 to 65 with those that are planning, developers that are planning to build along that road? What takes precedent? How do you manage that?
Well, I mean, what you want to avoid is, having a condemned property and buy people out, and so we've had a lot of our bigger residential developers have been fairly savvy at not pushing too far west, like of Harrison High School, because they don't want to get into where this corridor likely will be, because it's not a fixed point. It could kind of, no environmental study has been done, so there's a lot that could happen.
But it's going to happen.
So we would like it to happen. I think it should happen.
It's going to happen.
Yeah. I think if the community plays its cards right, it will happen. It's similar to the original 231 extension.
Look what 231 did.
Right. And you can kind of, take your mind back to the community when it was just dreaming about the first 231 extension. That's where we are right now, but actually a little bit further down the road, I think. because I think the development pressure is, I think, arguably a little more extreme than it was even back then. But it's the same sort of thing in play. We're seeing a need. We're seeing where the development's trending, and this would provide a lot of relief. I mean, you imagine the freight traffic would be eliminated from River Road, which is their one straight shot to I-65 right now, and it would really kind of shift, I think, a lot of traffic woes that West Lafayette experiences, of course, the townships experience, by having this newer facility be able to make this connection. We actually were chatting with some staff from Purdue about this proposal. A lot of them never even knew it was around. I mean, you've heard about it, and they immediately were just like, well, wouldn't it be neat if there was also like a southern branch to this that kind of came down and interchanged with 65 somewhere to the south, so you almost have like a full half beltway, kind of like
65.
yeah, like 469 in Fort Wayne, for example, which is a similar sort of thing, just at our scale. And I think it makes a lot of sense. It would relieve a lot of traffic that normally pours through Lafayette streets and tears it up, just right on Teal Road, and it's tough. So
accessibility seems to be the key point here.
It supports the growth. It props it up to a certain extent. It allows it to happen in a reasonable way without clogged streets and the rest.
Business developers.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, precisely. I mean, these sorts of corridors could attract any number of businesses that want to have interstate proximity, and then folks that want to be able to have this kind of straight shot to Purdue's west side. And if we keep it limited access, we prevent it from commercial stripifying. That'll just keep the traffic moving efficiently, and reduce those crashes. And
so basically, and not to like oversimplify, but like it essentially is a 4-quadrant piece for Tippecanoe County, where like your northwestern one and your southeastern ones are the ones where growth continues to happen, because in the south you see growth going into WIA, where they also have to do an expansion of their fire department. And over here you see an expansion going on in that direction as well. Whereas the other two aren't seeing as much growth on the other 2 quadrants.
Yeah, let me go ahead and go to the full county there.
Okay, so there is growth in that side too.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, as Lafayette finds ways to expand its sewer in that direction, from my understanding, it has a lot more flexibility to head south than north.
Okay.
My understanding is this area that we planned for the Hoosier Heartland, it's unsewered, and so even that plan said there's a lot of great ideas in here, but really nothing can happen until we get public sewer there. Either find some way for Lafayette to get its bottleneck at the Tate and Lyle plant to overcome that and extend the pipes, or really start having a serious discussion about a second plant upriver, which would obviously be a tremendous effort. But as communities grow, these things happen, and so that plan just sort of speculates on that in order for this to occur, given all of the quality infrastructure there, rail, highway, proximity to 65, there's a lot going for it that would lend itself to a major industrial manufacturing development. But it just needs sewer. Little detail, but but we got to start somewhere. You got to, these comprehensive plans, it's all about kind of dreaming big, looking out a good few generations, and collecting data, and then listening to the desires of the community, listening to the stakeholders, residents, elected officials, everybody's got a stake. We can help guide, we can help, with some ideas, and offer our own professional recommendations on where we think we'd see things go, because we see petitions come all the time for development. So we've got some ideas as well, and then try to come up with some sort of consensus for future growth. And then that also gives the development community something to go on. It kind of gives them a roadmap to follow. They're just like, they have some confidence that if they come into rezone property, say there's something that was set aside for single family development and it's currently zoned agriculture. Well, they come in with a rezone to do single family development. they should have some assurances that they'll get their rezone. Now it's still an up or down vote. In this case, would be the county commission, but the commissioners would do well to look at that same plan, and we remind them of that in our staff reports, and they usually go along with it. They respect those plans. So it really helps everybody to kind of lay down some ground rules. That's really what the comprehensive planning effort is. And but it is in the end just policy. It's not law, and so it's meant to influence law. And that's usually there's steps that we recommend after a plan's adopted to start realizing it. And so doing some proactive rezoning in areas that we would like to see, try to encourage development. Those sorts of strategies. So
Ryan, when I read the last strategic plan that was done, 95, 96, there was a large input of the unincorporated residents of township said they like the rural setting. They just don't want to be overtaken by West Lafayette and become part of this urban environment.
Mm-hmm.
But I see this growth, and we live out in the country here a little bit. I'm not sure how long we can maintain that. If I see these numbers here, that anticipating, I guess, the economic future of this township, we're going to have to balance that really, be very judicious of how we balance that and listen not only to the homeowners, but economic development.
Right.
And how do you, when you make these plans, the area plan commission, how do you balance that? You're looking at growth, income, stability, but you're looking at, for a better word, the happiness of the homeowners of saying, I want my 2 acres. I don't want to have a Jimmy John's next to me.
Right. Yeah, I mean, we're actually, if you're interested, it's not in your township, but they're a neighbor. We are currently doing a town plan for the unincorporated town of Stockwell, and we've never done one for them. And it's the first unincorporated town we've done a plan for. So there's no mayor or council to talk to. They have a township trustee, and we have the county commissioners. So there's our end for the elected officials. But we are currently doing a similar plan for them, and we hear the exact same things. There's a lot of people down there that are worried that Lafayette's growth is going to take them over, and they're worried that but they have public sewer, so they can grow. The fact that if they didn't, then we probably would just keep it rural, small town. Everybody's got septic, but they don't. They have a public sewer system that they're using. They've got room to grow, and their township trustee will tell you that they got room to grow down there in terms of that sewer capacity. So they have the ability to grow, but there's that conflict of like, well, we love little Stockwell, we love what we got, and we want growth, but they're trying to put their thumb on what they want, because they still want the rural life or the semi-rural life, and so there is that tension, and
access to urban opportunities.
Right, exactly, right, and they're pleased that there are new businesses coming in, like that sidewalk cafe that materialized there. That seems to be very popular. So it seems primed to kind of take the next step in its development. And possibly one day incorporate and actually have a town council and a mayor, something like that. These are how these communities grow. And so yeah, initially, so we really listen to those folks, and we're just like, if you're really just focusing on, the core downtown part of Stockwell, for example, we just want to zero in on that and kind of leave the rest alone. Okay, that's a good place to start. All right, let's plan this, and then, as the years go by, then there might be some other issues that will cause us to want to expand it. So in an area that's not been kind of planned out, it does make sense to kind of take a more conservative approach, especially if the stakeholders, the residents you're hearing this kind of pushback. You shouldn't, you can plan long term, but you can, clearly say that this should be kind of phased in, or, or sometimes you can even go so far as to actually declare areas that you want undeveloped. We've made, especially in some of our urban neighborhoods, we'll declare park open spaces, because we don't want to develop it all, and so, so it's
who would propose that?
Well, It could be, well, it could be anybody. It could be any of the stakeholders, people taking, people giving us comments. It could be one of our bright ideas if we think of it. I mean, when I'm, going through these processes, I listen intensely to the people that are actually speaking and giving comment. And if I start hearing themes about what they want, I'll try to respond to that to provide some sort of, kind of halfway measure to get where they want to go. Because you're right, it is a balancing act. You want to be able to, because if you're not growing, you're either stagnant or you're declining. So you want to be able to grow, but grow in a way that's comfortable for everybody. And these, like I said, 2045. This is a fairly long distant kind of concept, especially at the time it was adopted. But it's a reasonable estimation of how what's going to come based on what's already come. And in terms of the West Lafayette annexing, that sort of thing, well, I mean, it's they obviously as a city have sort of primed themselves to expand, and they have a lot of areas to infill right now, but they're already getting their infrastructure in. They put in their new firehouse. They know which way the wind's blowing, and they want to be able to serve their citizens, and so right now we still have a lot of watered, sewered farmland on the north side of West Lafayette that has to fill in first. And we've had petitions for what I would call kind of leapfrog development that have gone beyond that. And staff largely has no, don't do it, let's fill in these areas closer in first. But, commissioners can ignore us if they want to, and sometimes they do. So
you're saying go the other way.
Yeah, fill in the areas that are already on the grid.
Right, instead of going far out and developing back.
And there's some of these farmers that aren't ready to go yet. They've got the most valuable farmland ever. It's on water and sewer, and they're growing crops on it. Yeah. Eventually, that gives. Usually, if you have a very proud farmer who wants to keep doing that, and it's usually his heirs will make the sale. And so we still have some areas that are, for instance, like Arbor Chase, its 7th phase is finally going to take shape next year. They just got a subdivision approval, so those woods that kind of bound their northern edge, big chunk in the middle is going to come down. So those big areas are going to start filling in. Of course, Purdue Research Park, they're not a typical developer, they can afford to sit back, take their time, think about what they want to do. But that research park is essentially a fixed point. There's going to be university related commercial manufacturing development there. It's just taken a long time to pop up.
But that brings in those numbers.
Precisely. Yeah, on the employment and the residential side.
That whole research park and aerospace, which is bringing in other innovators.
Yes.
Which is going to bring in, we need housing.
Oh, yeah.
So we need roads. Yep. We need services like what the fire department here tries to provide.
Yep.
I look at those numbers and I'm thinking.
Yep. County sheriff, I mean, they're all connected.
We cannot provide service, fire protection, those areas right now with the staff we have. We have to plan for the future. 2045 is not that far away.
Yeah.
We're talking 20 years.
Yeah. I was looking at those numbers and they looked like something in the range of about 2,400 more dwellings to be added to the currently unincorporated part of the township, and then somewhere in the range of about 2,000 more going in Purdue. So, we don't have to, or like around West Lafayette, which we don't have to worry about directly. But then, so we're talking still a significant expansion. And as of right now, like how far out, if you can just on the map roughly, like how far out is West Lafayette sewered? Just so that we know.
I don't have their sewer map. Yeah, and that's another infrastructure tension. Where does American Suburban start and West Side stop, and they negotiate their own terms as they go. So it's but yeah, areas they annex, they mean to serve, on their own.
And American Suburban Utilities.
But yeah, I don't happen to have a map to show you that.
For a huge increase, they're petitioning for 40% increase, up to like $99 a month from $69 or $49.
Right. So, and Indiana American Water as well. They're tied up with it as well. But yeah, between those three entities, West Side Sewer, Indiana American Water and American Suburban. You know, they're poised to be able to deliver, you know, I think these sorts of units on the grid, you know, primarily in the city limits in the existing areas that are incorporated. But, you know, it's obviously straying outside too.
And so you're saying basically about 2,400 dwellings, roughly, like, when you guys do this estimate, that, like, to you guys, how many people does a dwelling equal to that are being added to the community?
That's
average.
your zoning.
Yeah, in terms of population, I don't know if they've nuanced it beyond this. But you know, I mean, these would be single, you know, large. A lot of them are single family detached environments. So we're talking family groups. You know, these aren't retiree communities.
So
although they may be mixed up in there too, but primarily it's family. It's primarily family groups. Yeah.
So about another 9,000 people if you were to take a simple approach on an additional population increase for the township by the end of 2045. Not including commercial increase as well, which will lead to other.
Right. Yeah. If you have business increases, that you're going to get population shifts,
Yeah.
Responding to businesses moving around, and
Yeah.
I think that's what we're all concerned with, is with our current capability to provide those type of services, which right now is fire protection.
Mm-hmm.
It's difficult at most right now to do that under the current circumstances. If we project this out in, let's say, 5-year increments, if we don't look at this and say we have to plan for 10, 15, 20 years down the road, we're going to be woefully behind the curve. We will not be able to provide those services unless we start planning and look at this now and say it's our obligation as a board and trustee to look ahead and leave the next generation of office holders in good stead. We have to take this, it's not gospel, but it's damn close.
Yeah, well, it's reliable information to go on, you know, and it's rooted in a lot of the previous studies we've done. You know, as the communities have grown, we sort of based these on previous estimates, and were we accurate with them? If we were really reasonably close, well, we could probably continue that methodology. So
when I talked to Mayor Dennis when I came on the board, I asked him, "What are your plans for this area?" And he said, "Nothing right now," with a glint in his eye. And I've known John for 30 years, and I think he was being totally honest, but reality seeks in and says, but how can we continue to provide the services, law protection, all those utilities, fire protection, that are going to put maybe an unnecessary toll on our residents tax-wise? And is this in the future that in 2045 that West Lafayette comes out and says, it's time to annex? I don't know. I don't have you have to think ahead.
Well, I think you can just fall back to history. I mean, the last time West Lafayette did a big annexation, they pretty much left out residences. They were going for the commercial properties. And of course, they annexed the university. That was really the heart of that one. But if you go further back in time, you know, when they annexed the area that I just kind of referred to, you know, the Arbor Chase North, you know, that whole area. Yeah, that was a deliberate action. They wanted the city to go that direction.
Look at Caliber, it's coming out.
They were ready to serve it, and you know, and they're already, you know, slowly redoing the infrastructure out there bit by bit. You see the work going on, you know, Salisbury and all the rest.
And I mean, at some point also cities behave in a certain way like organisms, if you will, and like at a certain point it will also need increased tax base as well, so we can expect that there will be
that's obviously, you know, right, bringing the residents in it does spread the tax burden around. So that's
and so, you know, what role can us as a board or like as a township unit, what role can we have in being able to like be more in conversation, especially when it comes to what our current limitations are when it comes to fire protection, et cetera, and being able to play a role in that being taken into account into how decisions are made.
Well, we hope to initiate the Wabash Township essentially comprehensive plan amendment next year. And you guys are obviously a big stakeholder, the people in this room, for example. You know, and so we normally operate by having a steering committee of stakeholders. And so we will likely be reaching out when the initiative is formally adopted, it's usually, in this case, would be a joint effort in terms of elected officials in terms of land use policy and zoning between the county commissioners and West Lafayette City Council. They would essentially issue a joint resolution, since the township straddles both sides of the city limits. And then we would try to start assembling stakeholders for that. Now, obviously, we've already done a lot of planning in West Lafayette, so there's already parts of Wabash Township that have been planned, just within the city. And I know your interest is the unincorporated area, but that's a vast area. So of course, we're going to need some leadership and some people that are interested in the planning process and dreaming big. It's not everybody's cup of tea, so we really want people at the table that are interested in this idea of having some influence in it.
So tell me your perspective on the utility of us working with the county people in developing a new strategic plan. Because when I talk to everybody involved, they said it's well past due. We really need to move on this. Where do we start? Because these numbers here are a little frightening if we don't prepare for that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and
how do we start this process?
Yeah, I mean, the comprehensive plan process is initiated by resolution by the locality that has jurisdiction. So Wabash Township straddles, is in the unincorporated county, so the county commissioners have jurisdiction on that part in terms of planning zoning matters. Not your duties specific to the township, that's specific to you. And then of course, within the West Lafayette city limits, the city council has its responsibilities there. So we essentially mean to get Stockwell to a point where it's almost wrapped up, and then we immediately would love to get onto the Wabash Township area. And added to that, West Lafayette has already kind of preempted us a little bit, and that's fine. They recently passed a resolution to do a parks plan study just within the city limits. So it's kind of outside of this, but that effort likely will sort of be, I think, wrapped into the Wabash Township overall. But they are looking for a very specific sort of parks plan that we've not normally done. And it's just in its early stages. I know the Parks Department's been doing some gatherings with folks, and so that's just starting off right now. But for your purpose, we'll be calling you to a certain extent, because we're going to want information on stakeholder groups that specific to unincorporated Wabash Township in the county, and so that we can hear from this. And we do speak to, in these policy statements, talk about the need to stress certain infrastructure issues. And so you're talking about township fire protection in the unincorporated county, or at least outside of the area that West Side Fire isn't already taken care of, then that can be a high priority item to go deeper in, to try to study that a little more deeply to see what your needs are and how they can be addressed. But again, these plans sort of lay out policy statements. They sort of prioritize projects that we'd like to tackle first based on need. You just described a need. Looks like a population surge is there. I know that sometimes colors are misleading, but you see the numbers. I mean, this is from our model projections, and we want to be able to make sure we can serve those areas. And so that should be a higher priority item. I mean, when it comes to public safety stuff, that's always the high priority stuff. So and that's something that is very reasonable to add in something like this, a plan like this, because because the city may not necessarily annex right away, and so it may still be largely, township responsibility, and so, as Mayor Dennis said, he didn't really give you a straight answer, did he?
He was being cautiously honest.
Oh yeah, I don't doubt that at all.
I respected what John had to say, but I also have to plan that eventually it's going to happen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's going to happen. Yeah, and I'm sure he's being completely honest. He doesn't have a fixed date he could give you. That's too far in the future, But if you look to the past couple of annexations West Lafayette's done, you see where it's going,
If I look at when Caliber went in, it was kind of like an afterthought, not much there, and all of a sudden within 2 years, you've got all this development on there and more's coming.
Yeah.
And so if you build some type of service and you build apartments or housing, that's going to attract other services, which means now it's a really big attractive area.
Right.
It's going to bring everything else in. And so somebody's going to want that, and that's going to be West Lafayette.
Yep. 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 And the housing policies that are influenced by the FDA loans is a big deal. That's why there's all the activity around Harrison, because that's an FDA zone.
Yep.
And so we've had our premier housing builders gobble all that up and get it ready and primed. It'll take years to build out, but it's,
we didn't even discuss sites for new schools.
Yeah, schools
you look at that,
right.
Harrison is overpacked right now. I
Sure.
mean, all these schools are.
Mhm.
You look at these numbers, that's frightening.
Yeah, and I've no doubt education priorities will also come into this township play because it's part of the infrastructure. So.
And before I go, I think that
Sure.
Chief Ward wanted to ask a question. If he wants, I know Brendan's there, so he can. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, I'm
Can you
kind
hear
of
me,
done.
Ryan?
So bring the Q&A if you got it.
Yeah.
Hey, Ryan, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Just a quick question. Once the study's completed or the plan is completed, how scalable is that plan in the ability to build a 5-year, 10-year, 15-year plan through those? Are we able to scale it back to be able to build our plans off of that and get an idea of where we'll set, or is it just a one and done sort of thing?
No, it's not a cookie cutter sort of thing. It really can be customized to fit the needs of the community. And so if you see value in having like a land use plan that's maybe a near term, midterm, long term, that's very reasonable and actually very far sighted, because you're trying to anticipate immediate needs based on current infrastructure, and then you're sort of speculating where things might radiate from there. And then you're really dreaming big and going way out into the future, thinking about how you might be able to plan in the future. So yeah, something like that could be customized.
Outstanding. Thank you.
Sure.
Yeah, and if you guys want, if any people have questions, you can always just ask questions right now, and then you can unmute yourself, and Ryan can respond to them.
Yeah, I'll leave my card. You guys can email me anytime, and got my number and where I work. So
I'm still awed by the fact that we're operating with a certain number of volunteer firefighters. And I look at these numbers, and if you project this in 5-year blocks, you've only got like 4 blocks of 5 years coming in here. And we have to, the township board and the trustee diligently have to work together to plan for this, or we're going to be woefully behind the curve, and our services to protect our unincorporated residents are going to suffer. And this is a wake-up call.
And so before, if anybody else has questions, you can ask. But before you go, I wanted to see if you would be able to share these documents with us so that we can put some of these snapshots on the website so that we have some.
Yeah,
that would be awesome.
Yeah, no, I can share these files with you. Yeah. These are in various places on our website,
yes.
But since I got them here, I might as well
exactly.
just skip to it. So yeah, no problem.
Yeah, I really appreciate that.
No, you're very welcome.
Thank you, Ryan. This has been much needed.
Okay, my pleasure. Glad to finally meet you guys. I've worked here for about a dozen years for the APC, and I've never appeared before. Certainly Wabash Township. So in fact, the first township encounter I had was probably Laramie for the Stockwell plan. So that was the first time I met a trustee.
Well, when I met you guys downtown, you said, "Wow, we've never been asked before."
Yeah, it's nice to be wanted,
Well, we're going to make you an honorary member of Wabash Township.
Well, thank you. I live just over the line in Tippecanoe. I live in Prophets Ridge, so I live in Tippecanoe Township technically, but I'm close to you, so yeah.
Bill Jones will protect you.
All right, well, let's go ahead and I'll let let
Yeah.
you
Thank you.
transition out of this.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Ryan, for coming in over here and helping us out.
Yeah, you're very welcome.
I'm gonna go ahead and I'll take a minute here for those on the Zoom so that we can switch to computers.
Yeah, and then you can take that flash drive and move the files to your
Oh,
laptop
perfect.
if you like.
All right, I will do that. Yes, that would be awesome.
Okay.
All right. Well, so Brendan, we'll take a couple minutes break just to change computers so that Ryan can head on out. Okay. So I would make a motion that we recess for 5 minutes, just to be able to set everything up.
Second.
Hearing a second, is there any opposition?
And you can,
None at all.
for
All
anyone
right,
that wants
so
to-
we'll be back in 5 minutes. All right.
He's coming with $10 coupon for fast food.
All right. I have to get the mouse back. That'll make it easier.
I got more if you need them. Yeah.
So. Okay,
Okay, we have a lot of.
perfect. So we are back over here. Let me just make sure. Can you hear me, Brendan?
Can you hear me now?
Wait, I can't hear you, so I want to make sure that this is working here.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, now I can.
Perfect.
All right. Sorry. Just shuffling.
Brenda's looking rather dapper in his scarf.
Yeah, Brendan looks like he's cold and ready for winter to end. I don't know why, but sounds like he wants to get.
I need a lot more snow. I need a lot more snow before winter can end. Come on. What? It rained on my birthday. That is so depressing. It used to snow on my birthday.
Yes, more snow.
Yes.
I agree with you. My girlfriend would say, Porva would say that if it's cold, it better be snowing. That's what she said. Yeah. So
I can sign up for that. I can sign up for that.
I don't know that that statement is very popular among people that have to shovel. Like I had to do all of last winter, but
right. It's not popular with my back, but it is, popular with the rest of me.
All right. So I call this meeting back to order here at 7:23. All right.
Chair, I'll just note, I think we've lost the trustee. So if there were any public comment questions for the trustee, those at this point may have to be submitted in written format.
All right. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Thanks for letting me know. So we are back here, and so we are in new business items B, which is resolution 2021-18. Mr. Secretary, would you be able to read that resolution if you have it up? If not, I can read it over here.
I sure can. Resolution number 2021-18, resolution regarding the remaining balance of the emergency loan proceeds. The Township Advisory Board of Wabash Township, hereafter referred to as the Board, Tippecanoe County, Indiana, met at a duly called and authorized meeting of the Board on the date set forth below. Such meeting being duly called pursuant to a notice stating the time, place, and purpose of the meeting received by all board members, and the following resolutions were made, seconded, and adopted by those present at the meeting. Whereas the Wabash Township Advisory Board approved an emergency loan in 2019, whereas the proceeds of that emergency loan were received during fiscal year 2020, whereas the proceeds from the emergency loan should have been deposited into the firefighting 1111 fund prior to the end of 2020. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Wabash Township Advisory Board that the remaining balance of the emergency loan proceeds be transferred to the firefighting 1111 fund prior to the end of the year. This resolution was adopted on the 14th day if it so passes. Yes, and it is up on our website, of course, as well. And the chair is pulling that up so folks can see that who are joining via Zoom.
So you were kind of frozen a little bit there for a second. Is that right? Can you hear me?
I can hear you okay. I was not frozen on my end, but I suppose it's conceivable. Yeah.
All right, perfect. All right. Well, I'm sorry about that. All right, so you guys should be able to see here in a second. For those in the room, I'll move it over so that you guys can see Resolution 2021-11, which Brendan just read.
2021-18.
18, sorry, that's my bad. Yes, correct.
It's okay. I didn't go that far back.
And so, let me see here. Which one are you guys able to see? Stop screen sharing. Let me put it up. You guys should be able to. sorry, it's a technology issue here. And the issue is that Angel is not as good at technology as he should be. If we are being honest.
We're thankful for what you do. I will say that.
Thank you. I appreciate that. All right. So here you go. So you guys can see resolution 2021-18 there. And it's listed there on the website as well. So you can pull it up. It's also on wabashboard.com. So going into discussion, is there any discussion on this particular resolution from any of the other board members?
Yeah, quick question, and it will be pointed. Was this generated out of the fact that money was not put into the proper place initially after it was received, Chair? Is that what we've come to find out, or where is the origin of this resolution? Yeah.
Yeah, so that would be the reason why we are considering this resolution. So in 2020, we received the proceeds of an emergency loan that a prior township board, of which only Mr. Betts is still serving, had approved an emergency loan. And we had to go through a remonstrance process. There was also a mistake where the trustee didn't show up by mistake on the day of the hearing, and we had to. It was a whole process. But after we got it delivered, it was supposed to be transferred to the firefighting fund, the 1111 fund, but it wasn't deposited there. So it's still in its own separate fund of the emergency loan, even though its proceeds should have gone to the 1111 fund. So DLGF, every year they generate a notice. It's called the 1782 notice. That's the one that's referenced in the third whereas clause. And that stated that we needed to put those proceeds into the 1111 fund. Since it hasn't happened, the board this resolution would resolve that it's required to be transferred to the 1111 fund prior to the end of the year, the remaining balance. Now, ideally, everything would be fixed because you can still go through and say, these payments should have actually come out of an 1111 fund, and you can go through and do the accounting work. But that is on the trustee. It's not something that the board can do specifically. However, we are, as a fiduciary body, we're stating that that's where it needs to be. If it's not done in time, another avenue still available to the board would be to essentially say that this fund is no longer needed, and we can designate where the remaining balance goes to. So it's always a possibility that we might have to do something prior to the end of the year and have an emergency meeting for that, but let's hope that it gets done and we don't have to go through and do another meeting to cover something that should have been done a year and a half ago.
So this is really a safety mechanism that we'll have the funds to do what the fire department needs to protect the residents.
Yeah, so let me see what Brendan had, and then I can come back to that. What question did you have, Brendan?
I apologize, actually. I think David's is more pertinent. I was going to just note that Randall Ward did have a question, so I'd like to cede him 30 seconds to get his comment or question out.
Okay, Mr. Ward, you're recognized.
Yep. My question is the amount of that. Is that the 500,000 that we've been talking about, and or not?
No. So
good question.
That's a good question. So unfortunately, there's a whole lot of stuff that's gone wrong on the accounting process when it comes to this administration. This is actually for the emergency loan. We took out an emergency loan for $415,000. And as we said, it was approved by the board in 2019, and then it got deposited in 2020. Those funds have not been put into the right account. And so the balance of those funds, which as of the last that we had was in the mid 350s, or 360s, should be deposited into the firefighting 1111 fund. Now I say the last that we had because, as probably everybody that's on this call is aware, we haven't really received any financial documents since the end of May, so we don't have specific details of that.
One further thought would be, once the resolution is passed, would it be wise to send a certified letter to the trustee informing her of the passing and providing a copy of the resolution, just to make it really airtight?
We can go ahead and do that as well. We'll also be sending it to our township council as well as the trustee via electronic means as well. And we tend to deposit a copy of those resolutions in the at the township mail, drawer for her. But that doesn't get checked out pretty often. So, as to the question that Mr. Tate had earlier. Yes, so the importance of this resolution really is that we've talked at the end of the budgeting process for the, our October 30th meeting, that we're interested in pursuing an additional appropriation if we haven't had the level of funding that we need to be able to keep our 3 paid firefighters on, et cetera, and be able to provide fire protection for our community. So we are really, to be able to do that, we need to demonstrate that there's still funding available. And given that there's been a lot of accounting errors, it's possible that in the view of DLGF, they'll look at the spreadsheet and say, well, this fund doesn't have the money available because this, it only has so much, and it'll be missing these $350,000 or so, as well as separate issue. We might still be missing the $500,000, and that one we'll talk about later. It's a separate resolution, and it's just that it's not noted on the 1782 notice that we mentioned, which is really important, and the township has 10 days to amend that after the end of the public hearing, essentially. So we want to make sure that we're addressing that and making sure that it shows up there. But on this particular resolution, it's part of that process. We want to be able to demonstrate to DLGF there's funding available for us to be able to do an additional appropriation. So that was a really good point to bring up, Mr. Tate. Any further debate?
Chair, I don't think I see any on my side. Given that fact, I would like to call the previous question to close debate and move to a vote.
All right.
Randall Ward still has his hand up, I think.
Yeah, I think Mr. Ward, had spoken already. He lowered his hand, so you're all good. Yeah, so the previous question is moved. And just checking on the parliamentary side, are we voting on the resolution or on ending the debate?
I'm particularly voting on closing debate so we can vote on the resolution.
All right, so seeking unanimous consent to end the debate?
So given them.
All right, perfect. So now a vote on the question. Mr. Secretary, can you please call the roll?
Chair Angel Valentin, how do you vote on resolution 2021-18?
Aye.
Okay. Member David Tate, how do you vote on resolution 2021-18?
Aye. And
I, Secretary Betts, will also vote in the affirmative. Therefore, this resolution is adopted by our board on the 14th day of December with a unanimous vote.
All right. So moving on to the next item of our agenda, which would be resolution 2021-19. I'll pull it up here so that people can also see it on the screen.
Resolution number 2021-19, resolution regarding transfer of funds in the miscellaneous revenue section of the 1782 notice. The Township Board of Wabash Township, Tippecanoe County, Indiana, met at a duly called and authorized meeting of the board on the date set forth below. Such meeting being duly called pursuant to a notice stating the time, place, and purpose of the meeting received by all board members, and the following resolutions were made, seconded, and adopted by those present in the meeting. Whereas Indiana Code 366616 establishes the mechanism for a one-time transfer of excess fund balances, whereas the Wabash Township Board approved Resolution 2021-7 Fund Transfer Resolution on June 15th, 2021, whereas Resolution 2021-7 transferred $500,000 from the Cumulative Fire 1190 Fund to the Firefighting 1111 Fund. Whereas Resolution 2021-14 required the $500,000 transfer of funds to the Firefighting Fund 1111 to be entered and noted on line 12 of the cumulative fire fund section of the current year fiscal worksheet. Whereas the township trustee entered and noted the transfer of funds as directed by resolution 2021-14. Whereas the submitted statement of miscellaneous revenues failed to list the transfer of the firefighting 1111 fund. Now, therefore be it resolved by the Wabash Township Board that prior to the completion of the 1782 notice, the miscellaneous funds revenue section be amended to include the $500,000 transfer of funds in column A of the miscellaneous revenues for the firefighting 1111 fund.
All right. So we're now open for debate. Is there any from Mr. Tate or Secretary Betts?
I'm fine with that.
All right. All right. So
Chair,
debate.
as I see no more debate on my side as well, I will move to close debate via unanimous consent.
Yep.
Perfect.
So given.
So I will then move that we call the previous question and vote on resolution number 2021-19.
All right. So you can call the roll, Mr. Secretary.
Chair Honorable Valentin, how do you vote on resolution number 2021-19?
Aye.
Member David Tate, how do you vote on resolution number 2021-19?
Aye.
And Secretary Betts will also vote in the affirmative. The resolution has been adopted by the Wabash Township Board on the 14th day of December this year, 2021, by unanimous vote.
All right. Moving on to the next item in our agenda, it is Resolution 2021-20, Resolution lowering 2021 firefighting budget to reflect 2021 spending. Mr. Secretary, would you be able to read the resolution?
Be happy to. We've got our resolution number 2021-20. Resolution lowering 2021 firefighting budget to reflect the 2021 spending. The Township Board of Wabash Township, Tippecanoe County, Indiana, met at a duly called and authorized meeting of the board on the date set forth below. Such meeting being duly called pursuant to a notice stating the time, place, and purpose of the meeting received by all board members, and the following resolutions were made, seconded, and adopted by those present in the meeting. Whereas the Wabash Township Board adopted a budget for year 2021 in October 2020 as required in Indiana Code 366611, whereas the 2021 budget currently authorizes the expenditure of $600,793 from the Firefighting 1111 Fund throughout budget year 2021, January 1st, 2021 to December 31st, 2021. Whereas the township dispersed $109,904 between January 1st, 2021 and June 30th, 2021. Whereas the Department of Local Government and Finances therefore estimate the current year expenditure between July and December to a total of $497,888, and it is listed as such in line 5, disbursements section, subsection 9 of the current year fiscal worksheet. Whereas the township laid off the remaining paid firefighters on June 30th, and in doing so, decreased the annual spending from the Firefighting 1111 Fund that would take place between July 1st, 2021 and December 31st, 2021. Whereas the Wabash Township Board has only received detailed financial details for January 1st, 2021 to May 31st, 2021. Whereas the Wabash Township Board has studied the limited data that we have received and have estimated that at most Wabash Township will spend $183,645 from the Firefighting 1111 Fund between July 1st, 2021 and December 31st, 2021. Now, therefore be it resolved by the Wabash Township Board that the 2021 budget for the Firefighting 1111 Fund will be reduced from $607,793 to $293,549.
Yeah. All right. So before we get started on the debate, before I cede the floor, I want to state, just cover a couple of things. First off, obviously, we would have liked to be able to spend more of that money and be able to provide appropriate fire protection for our community. The reason why we're reducing the 2021 budget, again, is to be able to say in the eyes of DLGF, this extra money is available there to be spent and to be allocated in fiscal year 2022. So what we did was What we did was we went through the data for all of this particular line items, and even though it likely won't be the case that we will meet every expense throughout, to be conservative, I went through and expected that the rest of the line items not related to employment we would have needed to pay out between July 1st and December 31st. Now, I don't expect that'll happen, so I think at the end of the year we will have an additional money brought forward as well that we will have to wait until the annual report to be able to see reflected. But we wanted to make sure that in decreasing the budget, we did not negatively encumber the township throughout the end of the year. So that's why we went with $183,000 of remaining spending for the second half of the year. We could have gone with a lower spending level for the second half of the year and decreased the budget further. But given that we don't have reports specifically for anything of the financial data since May, we really couldn't make that determination without risking the financial viability of the township. So we went the most conservative route and only removed expenses relating to employment for the second half of the year. And again, that's so that we can appropriate and make sure that we have the avenue to appropriate as quickly as possible come 2022. Any other further debate or comments from members of the board? All right, hearing none, is there a motion to end debate?
So moved.
There is a motion to end debate, and all those in favor say aye.
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 All right. So we are now calling the previous question to a vote. Mr. Secretary, could you call the roll on resolution number 2021-20?
I sure can, Chair. Chair, how do you vote on resolution lowering 2021 firefighting budget to reflect 2021 spending as presented?
I vote in the affirmative.
Member David Tate, how do you vote on resolution 2021-20, resolution lowering our firefighting budget to reflect our actual spending?
Aye.
And the Secretary Betts will also vote in the affirmative. Chair, the resolution has been adopted by this board by a unanimous vote.
All right, I appreciate it. All right, going on to the next item on our agenda, it's resolution 2021-21. Mr. Secretary, if you can begin reading that resolution as I put it up on the screen over here.
Perfect. Resolution number 2021-21. Resolution establishing Wabash Township office holders authorized to receive financial reports and notices distributed by the Department of Local Government and Finance. The Township Board of Wabash Township, Tippecanoe County, Indiana, met at a duly called and authorized meeting of the board on the date set forth below. Such meeting being duly called pursuant to a notice stating the time, place, and purpose of the meeting, received by all board members, and the following resolutions were made, seconded, and adopted by those present at the meeting. Whereas it is the responsibility of Wabash Township Board to approve budgets on an annual basis for the financial stability of Wabash Township, as noted in Indiana Code 366611. Whereas it is standard practice in the financial cycle for said body to receive all reports and notices for the Township Board to exercise its responsibility properly consider the proposed budgets. Whereas, currently, the only person authorized to receive financial reports and notices is the current township trustee. Whereas, there is no state statute which requires nor stipulates that the township executive provide financial reports and notices to the township board on a monthly basis, but it is unfortunately up to the township executive to make that determination. Whereas, the Wabash Township Board is the legislative body for Wabash Township, and as such, it is identified in Indiana Code 3666 as the body responsible for approval in financial matters of Wabash Township. Therefore be it resolved by the Wabash Township Board that the Department of Local Government and Finance, the LGF, is to release all financial reports and notices to all members of Wabash Township Board. Be it further resolved that the trustee is directed to add the names and emails of all current members of the Wabash Township Board to the Gateway 1782 notification module as individuals authorized to receive the 1782 notice report. And all notices are to be released to the same members of Wabash Township Board.
Right. So this motion is a little bit unprecedented, but it's made less unprecedented by our neighbors immediately to the south of us. So Fairfield Township passed a resolution that is nearly identical to this in one of their most recent meetings. Prior to this year, it would have been really hard to justify to DLGF why members of the board should be receiving these particular reports, given that that's just, there wasn't a need for it. Now, DLGF made an exception for Fairfield Township, and essentially what we're trying to do is be able to use the same mechanism so that the board has a stronger role when it comes to the reports. And going forward, I mean, ideally, we would still have a trustee that shares them with their members of the board, but we can't really rely on that as experience shows us. So we want to make sure that we are being able to be more engaged in the process and be able to receive notifications of some of these reports, because it's really important. The 1782 report really determines the flow of cash into the township throughout the year. And other reports are also critically important, as we detailed back during the budget process as well. So we want to make sure that we're trying to be proactive in that sense. And I know that it's a little bit unprecedented, but I think circumstances certainly call for it. So is there any other debate or comment? All right, hearing none. Is there a motion to seek unanimous consent to dispense with debate?
So moved.
So moved. Second.
All right. All right. Unanimous consent has been given, so we can now move on to the vote on the previous question. Mr. Secretary,
Perfect.
can you please call the roll?
Chair, how do you vote on resolution number 2021-21, resolution authorizing Wabash Township Board to receive all DLGF reports and notices?
I vote in the affirmative.
Member David Tate, how do you vote on resolution number 2021-21?
Aye.
And Secretary Betts will also vote in the affirmative on resolution number 2021-21. Therefore, Chair, this resolution has been adopted by this board by a unanimous vote.
All right, appreciate that. All right, so we are now moving on to resolution number 2021-22. Mr. Secretary, would you be able to read the resolution?
Absolutely. 2 seconds here. Okay, resolution number 2021-22, resolution defining the firefighting budget necessary for budget year 2022. The Township Board of Wabash Township, Tippecanoe County, Indiana, met at a duly called and authorized meeting of the board on the date set forth below. Such meeting being duly called pursuant to a notice stating the time, place, and purpose of the meeting received by all board members, and the following resolutions were made, seconded, and adopted by those present at the meeting. Whereas the Wabash Township Board adopted a budget for year 2022 on October 30th, 2021. Whereas the adopted 2022 budget currently authorizes the expenditure of $230,000 from the Firefighting 1111 Fund. Whereas resolution 2021-15 stated the board's intent to pursue the needed additional appropriations for budget year 2022. Whereas the resolution 2021-16-2022 salary resolution approved the salaries for firefighters for the budget year 2022. Whereas the Wabash Township Board acknowledges the increase in costs of fuel and supplies. Whereas the Wabash Township Board authorized a PERF retirement plan for the township's firefighters on April 20th, 2021, but it was not implemented prior to the firefighters being laid off on June 30th, 2021. Whereas the board is still seeking to pursue a PERF retirement plan for the township's firefighters. Now, therefore be it resolved by the Wabash Township Board that the township needs a budget of $569,918 for the Firefighting 1111 Fund. Be it further resolved that the Firefighting 1111 Fund needs to have a line item breakdown that matches the appended table, which, Chair, I'm sure you will pull up.
Yep. All right. So I know that it's a little bit small, but this one will focus a little bit more time since it's essentially a board's proposal of like a rough budget for the year 2022. So to give an idea, we previously covered the salaries of the chief and the firefighters and the part-time staff in the salary resolution. Now, what we did for the chief and the part-time staff, we kept the same rate. To add a little bit of a buffer, we multiplied the approved salaries on the salary resolution by 4%. Like, we increased it by 4%, just to make sure that we had a buffer in case that we needed to award a raise or et cetera, you know, over the course of the year. So we allocated a little bit. We're proposing, right, that we would need an additional amount of funding just to be safe. Similar, you can see, right, that as we mentioned earlier, there was an increase in part-time staff in the salary resolution that we included. We assumed an increase in cost for health insurance. And then using the data from when we did our study back in April for what PERF would look like, we came upon a number of 54,000 for the year 2022. Now, for those of you who were at that meeting, this will sound familiar. What we said essentially was that we would approve PERF, and there's a period over, you can buy prior service for the members of the department, right? So we would be buying prior service for Joe, Travis, and Drew once we're able to get them back. And what we would be looking at is that we break down the expenditures that the township should have had been putting into PERF over the course of a 4-year period. And so for the year 2022, between the PERF for that particular year for 2022 plus the payback from the 1/4 of the payback that we will be putting in to buy in prior service, it would come out to roughly about $54,000, a little bit less than that. So we put that amount there. Social Security, it's just 7.65 for the FICA tax. It's just that it's labeled as Social Security in the trustees' prior budgets, and I kept it the same way, but it doesn't just cover Social Security, it's the FICA component. And then unemployment, we kept the same ratio based on the chief and firefighters for last year, and we used that as the number for how much we were allocating for unemployment. For medical, as a result of between the COVID-19 pandemic as well as the resulting supply chain issues, our medical officer indicated that there had been a significant increase in medical costs. So we gave just under a 50% increase when it came to the medical operating supplies line item. Similarly, we went with a 25% increase on all repairs, and we went with a similar increase as well for other operating supplies. When it came to professional services, we kept that line item the same for utilities. And then non-medical insurance, we assumed that there would be some increase, and a significant one there being for fuel. There were concerns among members of the department of the cost of fuel being significantly higher. I think we were on pace to essentially go through $13,000, I want to say, dollars in fuel was my understanding from our conversation with the fire chief. So for the year 2022, we allocated $15,000, or we would seek to allocate $15,000, which is about a 66% increase in the cost of fuel for the township. Allowances, we kept at the same amount at this time, and that rounds out our budget for $569,918. Top line differences between last year's actual and this year's actual enacted budget for 2021 and the one that we're proposing we adopt in 2022 is that we have in the original budget for 2021, the trustee had stated that she would be hiring 2 other firefighters for 2021 for a total of 5. Ironically, we now have 0 firefighters, but this would go back to 3 at the time being, and then if we needed to do further, we could still do processes for additional appropriations if the board thought that would be necessary at a future time to bump it up further. So that brought down the cost for personnel services by $62,000, but then between the cost of increase in cost of supplies and services and charges, the total difference is just under $38,000 difference, lower than the actual adopted budget for the year 2021. So that's what we would propose. And this is also important because, as you guys know, we have a budget hearing on Friday with DLGF. And so like whatever we come up with here or whatever gets approved, something that as a board we would state during that particular hearing. That doesn't mean that they'll do it. It might be very difficult for it to get approved by DLGF. It's hard to override elected officials, as is the duty of the trustee. So we understand that it might be a difficult case, but we're still prepared to move forward with the numbers that we adopt as a board and work to make sure that that funding is available, be it through the DLGF process or the additional appropriations process. Any other further comments, discussions? Sorry to bore you to death with this. All right, hearing no further comments, is there a motion on the floor to seek unanimous consent to dispense with further debate?
So moved.
All right, unanimous consent is given. Hearing no objections. Mr. Secretary, would you be able to call the roll on resolution number 2021-22?
Absolutely. Chair Arnold Valentine, how do you vote on our resolution as proposed, resolution 2021-22, defining the firefighting budget necessary for budget year 2022?
I vote aye.
Member David Tate, how do you vote on our proposed resolution number 2021-22?
Aye.
And Secretary Betts will vote aye on resolution number 2021-22. Chair, this resolution has been adopted by this board and has received a unanimous vote.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Secretary. All right, so that concludes our new business. Moving on, there is currently no old business in the docket. We will move on over there. I know that it's a little bit late, but I wanted to see if there was any particular public comment or communication. I would commend to people that it would be ideal if there was any public comment, that it would be on the subject of either these resolutions or the conversation we had with Mr. O'Gara earlier. Are there any public comments at this time? You may unmute yourself if there is from the Zoom. Or raise your hand if you're in the room. All right, you can come up.
Can you come up there?
Yeah, so that people can hear you as well through the Zoom.
And if we could just have a name, of course.
Quartermaster Insinger. I just had a question on the budgetary line items as far as where bunker gear, radios, and of such items fit into the budget. If it's under one line item or.
Now, I'll be honest, and part of the struggle that we've had is that we as a board have never really received further detailed instructions from the previous trustee.
Okay.
So we don't know specifically where she has spent it from.
Okay.
Maybe I would cede 30 seconds of my time to former Chief Ward, who might have a better idea, to be frank.
I was asked by Deputy Chief Lewis to give him an idea of what amount of money per year should be in the budget for equipment.
Okay.
As far as personal protective equipment.
Yeah.
And that round number was around $50,000.
Okay. All right.
So
Good question.
It's a good question.
Angel, I think some of that kind of depends upon where the money's stacked at the time and what it is we're purchasing. Radio equipment and bunker gear has typically come out of Cume Fire. So it's not necessarily fallen into one of those individual line items, just simply because none of them are robust enough to be able to cover the cost of some of those high cost items. So it's just been items that have come out of Cume Fire. So I don't know if that will remain there. But that's at least from my knowledge, that's where it came from. That's where I purchased those items out of.
I didn't want to put my foot in my mouth. I thought that was usually the case, but I didn't have enough certainty to speak to it. So I appreciate the comment.
I just want to kind of put the bug in the board's mind that annually, we need to spend roughly
$50,000 to
5 sets of
replace.
gear, 5 radios, 5 helmets, 5 pair of boots to keep our old inventory moving out and new inventory coming in, to not get in a bind where we got to spend $100,000 in 1 year for bunker gear that's outdated.
Yeah,
So,
and I actually really appreciate that, and putting it on the board's a docket is also important in our purview, like us paying attention to it, especially as we plan for the future. You know, we're saying right now we need 5 items, but for 5 sets of equipment, roughly a year. But we also know that if we're looking at increasing the number of firefighters at some point in the near term, say a couple of years, how many we would actually be able to have. I mean, not from the 0 that we have right now, but from the 3 that was the standard prior to this, to June.
Those
we would,
numbers are based on our current volunteer numbers.
yes, currently in 2023, I have roughly 12 to 13 sets of gear that will have to be pulled out of service.
Yeah. So
Okay?
basically, just in case that the mic wasn't picking it up, you're saying.
Well, we've purchased over the last 7 to 8 years, and I ran the numbers. We've purchased anywhere from 5 to 10 sets of gear per year, in large numbers 1 year.
Yeah.
Some years it's been 4 sets, sometimes it's been 6 sets, sometimes it's been it's all over the place.
Yeah.
But if you're on a normal rotation, you're getting rid of 5, you're bringing 5 in.
Yeah, which makes sense.
And we just purchased like 8 to 10 sets of gear a few years ago, so we kind of replicated that issue again.
Yeah.
So basically what Enzi's saying is we've fallen behind. So if we're purchasing 5 sets of gear, we're rotating items out, radio equipment is needed. There's still radio equipment in use right now that they're not repairing and fixing, that'll end up having to be replaced. But by missing a year's worth of rotation on that will now double the number that will have to occur to be changed and moved over. Does that sound right, Enzi?
Yeah, and we currently have some radios, and Chief Ward is well aware of this. When I send a radio down to Raycom to have fixed, they're not getting new parts for those radios. They're going to their boneyard and giving me replacement used parts for those radios because
the parts are no longer made.
They're no longer available. They're outdated.
Yeah.
And I mean, it was great that Chief Ward, got us 6 brand new radios, and that was $30,000.
Yeah.
Okay. That's keeping us up in the safety line that we need to be in.
Yeah.
We can't send a firefighter in a burning building without communication device.
Yeah.
And if it's 10, 15 years old, it's used up pretty much. So
Ed, when you look at the proposed budget submitted by the current trustee and then what we're looking at, do you see a revision of that would be more in keeping what you think is needed?
The only thing that I had initially asked the trustee to alter a little bit was our professional services line, to increase it a little bit, because there was a lot of items that should have been coming out of professional services initially that were not. That's like our maintenance contract with Raycom for all the radio equipment and all that. That's being paid, but it wasn't coming out of that line item, which is where it should have been coming from. So that was really, aside from what you guys have put together, I think what you guys have built there looks fantastic. But the professional services was the only thing that I had just asked for a little increase in. So.
Okay. And we actually really appreciate that. I mean, I think we did send this out as well to the leadership of the department to just comment on the particular bits and pieces there. But it's a continuous conversation. The work of building a better budget that meets the needs of the township isn't ever fully done. It's part of the reason why we're here meeting all year long rather than just showing up 4 times and doing the bare minimum. So that's important stuff to keep in mind. And I'll make sure that we address it further as we continue this process, because obviously we don't want to fall behind when it comes to equipment. I do think that we will have opportunities to get out of a financial squeeze as we look through for the population growth appeal, it should give us more avenues as well to be able to increase the funding towards the replacement of necessary equipment. So that'll be work that we'll need to bake into that as well. So any other further comments, either from the floor or members through Zoom?
I see none on my side, Chair. I would like to seek unanimous consent to close debate and to move to our vote.
Sorry, I think didn't we already vote on that resolution? Yeah. It was a public. Yeah.
Great. Awesome. I just didn't have it.
Yeah. No, you're all good. Was there any further public comment from members of the public? All right. I'm not hearing none, but
I did have a
yes.
question. Chief Ward, when we purchased those radios, is that a purchase we made? Gosh, I guess that would have been, what about I guess almost 2 years ago now. But is that one that you came to the board and sought and kind of spoke about that need?
We did.
We had a
Yeah.
discussion about it.
Yeah, we had, because it was a big purchase. I mean, just that alone, of course, I was given the direction that I didn't need to talk to the board about it because the money was there. But again, I think that all kind of goes back to helping you guys lay that foundation of what's going to happen and help you understand what those big expenditures are going to be coming forward. So, I mean, there's going to be another big group of those radios that are going to have to be cycled out soon. And yes, the short answer is yes.
Now, which fund? Out of which fund did those funds come when we did make that purchase?
We purchased those out of Cumpire because it's a capital purchase. That equipment is capital purchase, so we can move it straight out of there.
Okay, thank you, Chief.
Ed, is that a contract that you signed with your supply group that fixes the radios and the bunkers? Is that a specific individual contract with each of those suppliers?
So the contract we have with Raycom, who works on all the radio equipment, it's a annual maintenance agreement, and we have the ability to. I say it's somewhat costly, but a lot of agencies around us don't do it. But we pay monthly a contract fee, and if we have if NZ finds some issue with a radio, we just take it over, drop it off, and they fix it at no added cost to us. So some of those repairs can be $1,000. I mean, depending upon what we're having worked on. So that little bit of money we're paying monthly saves us a ton of money in the long run, especially with the usage we have on our equipment.
I'm in just my short time, in what I have seen, I don't recall seeing that contract. I don't know if any of the board members have seen that contract, which I think we're supposed to approve. Is that correct?
This contract had been approved years ago. I just had it updated with Raycom. The contract's been in place for a long, long time, but I just had them update all their numbers.
Yearly renewal?
No, it's not actually. It hadn't actually been looked at when I had it renewed in 19 or early 20. It hadn't been renewed in 4 or 5 years. There hadn't been anything done with it. So, but I've got a copy of it buried. I can find for you, and I can send that to you guys.
Okay.
Yeah, that would be appreciated.
Okay.
I know that.
I think for us, it just makes us understand what your expenses are instead of having to go and beg and plead and not getting the answers from
the executive of the township. Yeah, I mean, this is all, it's stuff that's basic, but we don't always have access to all of the records. And I mean,
thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Ed. I mean, I think we're often flying blind, and I honestly, as a member of, I've been newer on the board, but I've been incredibly proud of the work that Brendan and David, and honestly myself too, that we've done trying to deal with very little information and be able to make the most out of it and be able to serve our constituents the best. But obviously there's still work to do.
As far as the bunker gear, when I'm given approval to order somebody sets of gear, I reach out to my contact at MES and let him know that I've got 5 individuals that need to be fitted for gear. Okay. And then he sends me a quote, basically not per individual, but per set of gear. And then I submit that.
Yeah.
As far as repairs on bunker gear, I have an individual locally that I take bunker gear over to get fixed occasionally.
Okay.
So really no contracts on that side.
Yeah, no, And that makes sense, yeah, just an
Just the
expense.
expense and the approval to make the phone call.
And, you know, obviously, like, a lot of those expenses are already baked in, right? Like, and the board doesn't need to know about every particular expense that is done. Like, you know, we don't have to come to the board for approval of every expense. But as Ed mentioned, when it comes to bigger purchases, even if it's allocated, it's okay to have, and it's good to have a conversation about what that entails and how much it's being spent, where it's coming out of, because obviously, it's important, but that's not how it's happened historically and in this administration. So
My only
Yeah.
question was
It's that public informing piece.
adding another line item to the budget, making a line item permanently here, you know, next year.
Yeah.
Possibly.
that is a possibility. I think so. And going back to what we did in 20, or what we wanted to do for throughout this year, the idea is to be able to have these conversations throughout the year so that when the budget season comes around, we are talking the same language and we already have a good idea of what we need to do. So it's good to be having that conversation now too, because it's important stuff. So yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much, Enzi. Is there any other further public comment before we close the meeting here? All right. So hearing none, I know that obviously these are trying times for the township, lots of discussions and conversations about a whole lot of stuff. Oh, I see Miss Dwyer or Mr. Dwyer. You are recognized.
Yeah. So I wanted to encourage, and I wanted to encourage the board members and the trustee to show up to the meetings in person. And it's not anything against Brendan or against Jennifer for not showing up in person, but I wasn't able to listen to a lot of the meeting, but at the beginning of the meeting, there was a little bit of talking over and such. That tends to happen a lot on Zoom. I'm sure everyone's aware of that. I think if we can get our board members and our trustee to be in the same room during these meetings, that would eliminate a lot of that. Particularly some of the arguments that have happened in the past. Some of that's a little bit less likely to happen if people in person having to look each other in the face when they're, you know, having these discussions rather than being on Zoom. Just a way to facilitate a more civil and atmosphere that allowed discussions. So I just want to encourage the board members. I understand we've got health concerns, and I'm not saying that that's not a thing, but I'd just like to encourage the elected officials at the very least to show up in person so that we can have that in-person discussion. So, and like I said, it's not anything against Brendan or David or Angel or Jennifer that doesn't show up. I would like to encourage the elected officials to show up in person. So.
I appreciate that, Mike. I will note from my experience, she's actually a fair bit more civil when she attends via Zoom than when she's in person. And I do appreciate you kind of making that known in terms of your preference and that communication piece. Thank you.
Yeah. I just like arguing with Brendan, though. Don't we get into heated arguments over Zoom, Brendan? Don't you just love it? So many times.
Oh, yeah.
You know, talking over each other. All about that. Just being silly. All right. So I don't think there's any other further public comment. As I was saying, you know, obviously times are tough, and there's a lot of stuff outside of our control as a board. We're going forward with the business of governing however things turn out in the community. However things turn out, we're going to keep working and focusing on the department and on the people of our township, and we're ready to keep doing the work that we've been doing. And we appreciate you all for participating and for your comments. It's important work, and you know, the board can always be proactive and work with the department and want to be able to foster that and make it grow and make a better township through it. So we'll do more work like today and hopefully be able to have more conversations with people in the community, stakeholders, APC, other folks. And so we're grateful to have had Ryan earlier on today. I think that's informative towards us as we keep planning for the future. And you know, it's an important part of how we actually meet the needs of our constituents. So that's our commitment as a board. And yeah, so here, before we go on to end adjournment, I just wanted to give you a future meeting date. for 2022. So the first meeting of the year, it's really early, and it's only like that because it's exactly required by law. It's on January 4th, 2021. I know that nobody's looking forward to meeting right after the new year on the 4th. Sorry?
I will actually be out of town that day. So I may attend virtually or perhaps not at all. I'm not sure. But
I see that
I'll be with Brenda.
it was mentioned. I said January 4th, 2022, not 21.
Yeah.
I made a mistake on the agenda. That's the first typo of the new year where I put the old year instead of the new year. So that'll happen through February or so. So January 4th, 2022 is our reorganization meeting. It's mandated by state law. It's to decide determine who will be the secretary, the president, and of the board and the financial committee. So, all right. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
So moved. Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right. Any opposition? Ensinger is opposed, but he doesn't have a vote. So this meeting is adjourned at 8:17 p.m. Thank you all for participating, and we'll see you soon.
I knew you were going to say something important. About it.